development. The festival this year was hosted on the 27th, 28th, and 29th of October to commemorate Urban Month. And the festival enabled social media activations and creative engagements online. The theme for this year's urban festival was the Rebuilt City, and it was focused on South African and global conversation on how our future cities and towns can re-energize their commitments to the new urban agenda by becoming more sustainable and resilient. As we kickstarted the program, we had 12 sessions, and some of the sessions on day one was activating and learning around designing and recovery for the rebuild of our cities. We've had a session around the recollaboration and innovation of the post-pandemic governance. We had conversations around the cities as green job engines, and the case study for building cities through a circular economy. As we proceeded to day two, we had conversations around how do we get communities to engage. There was a particular discussion in the crisis in Soweto. Then we looked at discussion around the ways to decarbonize our cities. And session 7 on day 2, affordable housing as a key driver for sustainable cities, looking and reflecting at how we rebuild our cities. And session 8 on day 2 focused on public spaces in the streets for post-COVID city recovery. On the last day of the urban conference, we actually had a reflection on mobility as a foundation for rebuilding cities and scaling community-led projects for citywide impacts. Session 11 focused on having smarter city enhancements to respond to resilience, and how do we focus around that. And lastly, session 12 ended off with events and cultures as stimulus for city recovery. This was coupled in with key messages by the opening on day 1 with Deputy Minister Obed Bapela from DCOC on the Urban Festival, as well as messages from Human Settlements. And during the session of the program, we had our urban activations as well. So Rashik, I'm going to hand back over to you. Thank you very much, and over to you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I will share some of the big ideas and themes which really came through across Urban Festival. We already saw how there were approximately 950 participants, in particular during the main conference, and that excludes any of the activations which have taken place on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I think it's safe to say that over 1,000 people took part, at least in the conference and activations across 3 to 5 days. And we will also share some of the social media statistics soon after this month. We were lucky to have 45 speakers, and they were really from different industries. These included data scientists, entrepreneurs who've delivered large affordable housing projects, economists, local government officials, and some leading planners as well. So quite a diverse mix of people, including those from the arts and cultural sectors. So I'm just going to run through sort of what stood out to myself and my team the most, and why this theme of the rebuilt city was quite important for this particular moment in time. So what we heard from various actors and participants is that South African cities have in fact been in a state of emergency for quite a while, and they've had to sort of develop the leadership skills as they move from crisis to crisis. And in fact, COVID-19 exacerbated these existing fractures within our society. And so there's actually a need for what one would say is emergency governance leadership and leadership skills, which includes collaboration, trust building, and partnership building under immense pressure and under very short timelines. And in that particular theme, we heard from Nduzi Mbada, where the Gauteng province had in fact developed an emergency governance approach, ranging from decision-making to budgeting, and shared some of the opportunities and challenges of working with different spheres of government. We also learned that the transition to a green economy is inevitable, and that really it's a choice between being proactive and being reactive. And so if we are to be proactive, we need to minimize the negative impacts of those actors or those spheres where people are simply being reactive, and that the costs and risks of being reactive is that we'll have an unjust transition to the green economy or to green economies. We need a better understanding of the green economy drivers, especially in terms of green jobs. Which sectors are in fact green, which industries do we need to attract, and how do we need to attract them? And we actually had a session on that, cities as green job engines, which highlighted that there are actually a variety of opportunities for employment in the green economy, from transportation to waste management, green housing, including tourism and ecological preservation and restoration sectors. So we found that the green economy is not simply about solar panels and wind turbines, but that local governments and metros have levers in terms of their procurement and in terms of their job strategies to actually move towards the green economy in a very incremental way. I'll just go through what I thought was quite a big revelation, and I think this links into our needs to sort of build back better. So across the sessions, there was this idea of reframing the way we recover and rebuild cities. So which data sets do we use to track if we're recovering? What are we rebuilding towards, and how and who is recovering? And we found that this involves multiple layers. But in fact, the difficult part is really to rethink entire existing city systems. And I'll touch on some of these in terms of what it means to rethink entire systems. We heard that we need to move towards environmental and climate conscious practices. We learned that we need to embrace circular economy models in a very short period of time. And in fact, Africa has an opportunity, since its pathways are not so fixed like the global north, to actually embrace circular economy models, and that the circular economy is not just about recycling and waste. We need to plan for and actively support large-scale affordable housing, and also promote densification, mixed use, and infill developments, both in the formal and informal parts of our cities. We learned that the informal economy is still largely being criminalized or ignored or denounced. And the informal housing sector, in addition to that, is one of the fastest growing housing sectors. So a large portion of the urban expansion in South Africa is from that informal or semi-formal housing sector. And the informal economy actually supports many, many livelihoods in South African and African cities. So how do we acknowledge and accept informality while improving the basic living conditions of city residents? I recall Monica Glinsler shared that, in fact, the global urban expansion that we're going to see in the next 3 decades, 40% of that will be in informal areas, or will be through informality. We learned that there is another layer of, I suppose, education or an education network that's needed to learn from grassroots organizations, communities, and individual households. So how can knowledge and education exchange be formalized so that there's a direct line to various civil society organizations and grassroots organizations, providing intelligence and information, and most importantly, relationships. There was a call for more applied research to consider new models that support our themes of resilience and sustainability. What should our future African cities look like? Some of the sessions mentioned that they don't want to see grand or unattainable visions necessarily for new South African or African cities or new towns, but that we should see context-specific considered approaches and make up our own definition of smart cities, which are eco-friendly, citizen-oriented, and actually reflect improvements to the quality of life to residents in the short, medium, and long term. In particular, this new paradigm, or this reframing of the challenges was particularly important in transport and mobility, where we heard that unless we think of the future as not being a replication of the past with the addition of some of today's current trends, and if we don't completely shift our paradigm, we'll simply be providing transport and thinking of transport providing for the last 20 years instead of providing transport for the next 3 to 4 decades. So we heard a big focus needs to shift around simply providing transport and delivering infrastructure as being a budget item, but towards measuring what we call access, and that is people's access to jobs and services, their access to a better quality of life, access to parks, recreation, and amenities. And that access should be driving our transport planning and our mobility systems. And one of the provocations shared was, do we provide lots and lots of BRT and buses to a hospital? Or do we ensure that people also have digital access to doctors and healthcare workers and clinics, and ensure that there is a basic fiber and internet infrastructure, which gives people immediate access to many services and events, including Urban Festival 2021, and hopefully the future editions of this festival as well. We learned a lot about civic tech and smart city solutions and their relevance in preparing for crises and understanding that there will be future crises. And so using civic tech and open data in particular, or open access data, to start to track the various aspects of cities and regions and districts, and that if we get this right, smart cities could in fact promote equity, especially where it makes our governance and spheres of government more responsive to residents. We also saw global case studies around placemaking and tactical or temporary urbanism strategies. And the big message there was really just get going. Don't be too concerned with the red tape or the barriers. Small interventions can really have a great impact. And that also relates to the IEDF seed grant projects, which have shown us that a lot of small interventions can have a great impact, not just on the neighborhoods, but on people's lives, on their confidence, on their what they think of the spaces in which they live, and how people heal as well. But political will is crucial in terms of these public space and public realm approaches to improving everyday life, whether it be in transport interchanges, or whether it be in neighborhoods or where people live. And then there was a big call for us to recognize the role of community centers as supporting our resilience, in particular in cultural and art centers dotted across various communities around the city. I suppose like our religious institutions and our city halls, they play an important role in building resilience and in breaking down intolerance, in building trust and giving people spaces in which to express and to express their creativity. So there's more recognition which is needed from planning, policy, and legislation and regulation to actually enable culture and arts at both the community level and at a more metropolitan level as well. So those are some of the big ideas which came through, but I think the main theme was that we need new paradigms, and that those paradigms need to be communicated, not just to city officials and transport engineers and those in housing, but needs to be communicated to I suppose, the whole of society, including private sector and communities, and that we're now in a completely different world, and that the idea of the new normal doesn't actually exist. We actually are in the new abnormal. And in fact, without recognizing that things have changed and that the city systems have changed, we won't be able to build back better or even improve on the systems of before if we're using the past alone as an indicator. So I hope that gives everyone a glimpse into the various conversations and discussions. On that note, I'm going to lead straight into more creative elements of Urban Festival 2021, which was the My City, My Lens competition, which called for visuals, graphics, and posters from around the country around the theme of what is the future of African culture. Session 12 of the conference focused on whether culture, the creative sectors, and events can help our cities and towns recover. And this competition, which ran across the month, was focused on what is the future of African culture and how does one express that. So Siwe, if you are comfortable to announce the winners and to share the winners with us as well. Thank you.
There I am. Morning, everyone. Thanks, Rashik. So I think maybe I can just give some background to where this competition came from. because it mainly stemmed from a piece of work that we did internally as SACN. As part of the Inclusive Cities program, we're really trying to think about and do research that allows us to contribute towards safe and spatially transformed and interconnected communities that really have equitable access to, social amenities, economic opportunities, and especially for the most vulnerable in our cities. So through working in this area, I think it really became evident for us that despite, the different policies and transformative agendas that we have and the very kind of proactive and progressive policies that we have, we don't really have visuals that reflect what the future of our cities should look like, and to achieve this vision of inclusive cities, especially from the perspective of young people in cities who have really a wealth of ideas and creativity, as we saw in the last session of the Urban Festival. So to really fill this gap between the current situation and our current reality, to fill the gap between the current reality and the future city, we created the Visualization Studios, where multidisciplinary actors came together to co-create these visuals that reflect the future of our cities. And so we had a series of multidisciplinary group design studios where students, academics, creatives, entrepreneurs, city officials, and people working in the urban development space came together to draw from their own experiences, their frustrations and ambitions, to create all these incredible visuals that reflect the future of our cities. And the goal was to develop a series of multi-layered and perhaps even contradictory visual responses from a diverse sample of people and cities. And I think it's important to mention here that the multi-layered and kind of complexity that we have in our cities won't really go away, but we'll see the different contradictory visuals and responses from people based on their own experiences. And so the main findings from the studios project was really about indicating people's desire for access to opportunities and Wi-Fi public spaces, but also the creative economy emerged as a major opportunity area for youth in cities, especially as it links to culture in cities. And so that's where the My City, My Lens competition came up to say, what is the future of this African culture in cities, especially if young people are provided with many opportunities through this industry, and how cities can design and support this culture in order to enable access to economic opportunities for young people in cities. So the questions that we are trying to understand from the entrants, from their perspective, is what is the future of culture in your cities, and how can the city respond, or what are the kind of things that we should be concerned about in terms of the future of culture in our cities. And so after some intense deliberation, I'm happy to announce, I think firstly, the runner-up to the competition. So I'll just quickly share my screen. And there we go. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Sure, thanks, Rashik. So this is an entry from Mondli, the artivist, and his entry seeks to respond to the idea that cultural heritage, including attires and regalia, face the possibilities of exploitation through celebration. So from the price of the regalia, the chance takers exploiting others through traditional African practices via izangoma, izinyanga, etc., the defunct banknotes are a metaphor for the price of exploitation. So this is really also looking at the kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly about the future of culture in our cities. And I think it was quite interesting in terms of the provocative nature to tell maybe the ugly truths that we don't want to face about the future of culture, but it's more to understand how we can really preserve our cultures and prevent them from exploitation through celebration. So in absentia, I'd like to congratulate Mondli for his runner-up entry. And then I will just move to the second entry. Sure, I'm sure you can see that one as well. So this is our winner for the competition. And okay, can you still see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, okay. So this is the winner, and this came from Kavita. And I'll just read out the caption quickly from the entry. It says, dreams are related to the past, but connected to the future. The future African city is one we've dreamed of. We followed it steadfastly, weaving in past and present. If you listen carefully, you can hear the heartbeat, the beat that unites us, our roots that run deep, anchoring us on our path to the African city of the future. Our cultures are connected and expressed in our homes, businesses, and echoed over the rolling hills. The hills that proudly support the energy of the future, our symbiosis with our environment, who lusciously supports us to greater heights. Our city is the gateway to the future. Siyayibona inhlanzi. So that is our winning entry, and I think it ends off on a really positive and inspiring note in terms of the interconnectedness of our future cities and relatedness between nature and ourselves, and being more connected to the natural environment and how it supports us in our daily lives. So really want to congratulate the winners and thank you for the people who entered the competition, and really excited to see what this hashtag can really bring for us, because we've had this hashtag My City, My Lens before, South African Cities Network, and I think we can continue to share from our perspectives what the future of our cities is through this platform. So thank you, Rashik, and congrats to the winners.
Thank you, Siwe. I see that there are high-speed trains in there as well, Siwe, and are we going to get one from Joburg to Durban and then possibly to Cape Town? And then I see, I really like the fact that I think everyone is I think with the pandemic in particular is saying, well, you know, do we have access to nature? How do we not see nature as purely going to the park, but in our homes and spaces? And I think we've seen some controversial moments in the country around people growing food and flowers on their own pavements, and in not waiting for these spaces to become occupied, but actually embracing the power of green, for lack of a better word, and the power of landscaping for healing and for community building. I think in some towns, I think my team might need to remind me, but we saw a group which were occupying plots in their neighborhood which were known for illegal dumping, and actually beautifying them with recycled tires, not necessarily food gardens, but greenery and plants of various types. I really love the colorfulness of this, the winner, and in a way it does sum up Urban Festival 2021, and possibly on with Polisa's permission and Sitole's permission, we will use it as a cover for our report on Urban Festival 2021, because I do think it, as you said, it captures our realities of today and ambitions, but at the same time being a bit ambitious for the future, and what is this future and what could it look like. So really amazing work, and Siwe, if it's possible in the future, we'd love to see all the other entries as well. I know we don't have time for that, but well done on a competition to get people thinking and visualizing without any constraints of a webinar or a formal discussion. So in addition to the My City, My Lens competition across the Urban Festival month, we're also fortunate to have not just virtual conversations, but a hybrid where 3 activations, which are in fact IUDF seed grant projects, were able to bring people together physically with all protocols and social distancing regulations observed, to have a more in-person engagement. But before I go there, I see that there is possibly a question or a hand raised from one of the attendees. Sean, if you could enable. So talking is now permitted. If you'd like to share your question or comment. If your hand is raised, you're now able to share your audio and share your question or comment. Okay, I think we'll come back to that raised hand after we share some of the activations. So there were, just a reminder for those that have not been following all the content on the South African Cities Network platforms and social media platforms. There were 3 activations, and we'll start with Rihanna Musaji, who is involved in the Slovo Park activation, which actually has been underway for quite some time. So Rihanna, tell us what happened on the day and what the ambitions were, and how it brought people together in these interesting times. Thanks,
Rashik. Just to put Slovo in context very quickly, Slovo is on the western side of Johannesburg. There are a number of informal settlements in Joburg that are called Slovo Park. And this team have, interestingly, in relation to a rebuilt city, in December of last year, identified for themselves water leakages and poor sanitation in the settlement that they live, that had been their focus. And for the activation, they chose essentially to build on an idea that Sithole had kind of mentioned when he visited to see what they had done on the toilets with the IUDF seed funding, which was the women who gather at the taps to do laundry, and just how difficult it is because of how low down they have to bend. And this team chose to use the activation, and we're really grateful for the funding that had come from SACN and the IUDF to purchase and install with their own labor. So they brought in their sweat equity, as in the photographs you see on the top, to install 4 wash troughs to make doing laundry easier for everyone in the settlement. But unfortunately, it still seems to be fairly gendered and predominantly women who are doing the laundry. But it was really wonderful to see men saying we want to do something to improve the lives of our mothers, sisters, wives, and girlfriends. And then on Thursday afternoon, Rashik, we had the young people in Slovo, predominantly a group of high school students who did their activation around storytelling and told the story of a number of things that the slightly more senior group have been up to. And I think that's been phenomenal. We did have a bit of a challenge, Rashik, in that as we were installing the wash troughs, there was someone who was injured. He's currently in hospital waiting for surgery on his fingers. But I think that in itself was very instructive. Mchini, who was the person who unfortunately was injured, is a Lesotho national whose passport has expired. And I think for me, the symbolism of South African citizens shoulder to shoulder with foreign nationals, irrespective of what their migrancy status might be in the eyes of Home Affairs, collectively trying to improve spaces of informality was particularly poignant. The young people and their ability to pick up on the story, articulate it, and in this container, Rashik, this container, again, leveraging off the SACN funding, IUDF seed funding, has had a donation of solar power. So the container is now solar powered. And we have Raspberry Pis in there, and the kids are getting some digital skills training. So all in all, was a great activation event with a lot of electioneering happening in the middle of the activation, and lots of banter about we can do things for ourselves. And for me, I think the Rebuild City is one in which community members have the ability to identify their own challenges, and they are supported with the resources to make the changes that are not about climate resilience far away, but about real lived experience. So it was a wonderful activation, and the team at Slovo are super grateful to have been selected as part of the activation at Urban Festival 2021.
Thanks, Rihanna. Firstly, all the best for the person that was injured. I hope they have a fast recovery. And then, Rihanna, I just have one question. And then secondly, before I get to the question, Rihanna, just to thank SA Cities Network. We really pushed for these activations across the country, and they were so open and willing to combine with our Zoom and webinar discussions, some in-person engagement. Rihanna, this also seems to be a sort of a placemaking and community building. You know, not placemaking just to have, you know, a public space where people, you know, use swings and have their lunch, but actually this is really placemaking and resilience building and trust building. How have people responded to the installation as well, and how did they feel on the day?
So Rashik, I think we're learning about the transitions, and I think one of the reasons why the Barefoot Facilitator as a company has gotten involved with this project is it's lovely to sit on Zoom or meet as we did yesterday with Human Settlements in the Maharani Hotel and have a conversation in theory about these things. The practice is a lot more complicated. So, I mean, I just want to share a quick story, Rashik. So outside of the SACN funding, I funded for some artificial turf to be put in outside the container, and the kids worked on that on Wednesday and Thursday, and then it was there for the storytelling. And it was a couple of different pieces of artificial turf. And I mean, the little kids in particular, just the joy of being able to slide and get a ball out and not get hurt was amazing. But unfortunately, by Friday morning, the group of high school kids had sent me a WhatsApp to say, "Mums, we've got a problem. One of the pieces that we installed on Wednesday has been stolen." And that was very, very painful for the high school kids, for the younger kids. I mean, I was there on Thursday afternoon, on Friday afternoon now to check out this theft incident. And the little kids, Rashik, there was a little young girl there who they had made mud pies, and they had this board, and she was decorating this cake that she was just determined to make available to us. And then it was like a spontaneous happy birthday, even singing, even though there was no birthday. And my heart just sank that we're going to have to do a lot more trust building, community safety, a whole range of things. So we now have to find an alternative plan for how we can make that turf functional without the investment being compromised. And so deep lessons, Rashik, but really excited just to see these smiles on children's faces, to know they don't have to come to the park across from my house in Crosby, that there's something right where they live that brings dignity and joy.
Thank you so much, Rihanna, and thank you for sharing the images of the activation actually taking place and leaving an Urban Festival 2021 legacy as well, in communities in South Africa, in particular in this case in Johannesburg. I'd like to call on Nkululeko Mthembu to please share a bit more about the activation which took place, if I'm correct, on Friday. Nkululeko, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to join you folks today. So, way of introduction, I'm Guillaume Timbo and I'm based in Durban. I'm just waiting. I'd just like to confirm if you folks can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Thanks.
we can now.
Okay, fantastic. So Open Oceans is a IUDF funded project. And I just thought, let me just give a little bit of background to it. So we centered around sort of the urban ocean duality. So what does it mean to live in a coastal city, right? And one of the things that we sort of targeted was around the idea of circularity and more so a data-driven approach to circularity. And what we did a couple of months ago was essentially to list all the rivers with the understanding that plastic pollution actually comes from the rivers and the communities surrounding them, as opposed to the ocean itself. And through a data exercise, we're able to measure the amount of plastic waste that actually comes out of these rivers. So to essentially give a sort of data-driven approach to this. And then to say, what can we do next, right? And through research, we found that in a school in Empangeni, that some of the kids, 42% of the learners there actually have visual impairment. In other words, some of the issues that are related to behavior and subordination and just participation at school is not necessarily attributed to a behavioral thing, but is more of an idea that the children in classrooms cannot see. And so that then created a framework around placing ourselves and working with schools. And so what you might see here is World Environment Day, when we went out and we actually went and did a pickup sort of campaign around the back of port area, again, highlighting a very important economic engine to sort of raise the agenda around plastic pollutions in our oceans. And essentially then saying, what product can we create that will tie everything together, right? And so on the right-hand side, you sort of see a 3D printed prototype of what we hope to see and to really then take plastic waste and manufacture frames so that the kids in schools can then sort of see they're bringing about a sort of social innovation approach. So for our activation, we've essentially partnered with all of these various stakeholders, and these are important in our city, primarily based that they place themselves in marine and maritime environments. So we've got government, we've got environmental services, we've got Go Durban from a sort of transport, mobility, and logistics perspective, but more so we brought up on Ushaka Marine World, again from a position of looking at the ecology and sort of the wildlife in the port environment. So ahead of the day, we essentially worked with 4 schools, and then we sort of put a challenge out there and said, hey, folks, you need to build this object that can go out and actually collect waste in the port. And the trick there was to say that this object must be made from waste recyclables. So we went through to one of the local maker spaces there, and we got the kids involved, and they were actually building these prototypes using waste materials, etc. And then the actual activation took place at the oldest yacht club in Africa. So this is the Royal Natal Yacht Club. It is the oldest in the Southern Hemisphere and the oldest on the continent. And the reason why we chose this venue is essentially to create that duality, right, of being the oldest and ironically hosting a youth innovation challenge within there. So it's like the demonstration of that sort of the old and the new. So that was really exciting there. So the day, as you can see, we had some folks coming through. We had the schools that were presenting their models. The judges that were there, we essentially came from the partners. They had not been engaged before, and so they were totally independent and weren't aware of the process that was taking place, but arrived there on the day. What we also had was presentations from the various stakeholders. So Oracle Environmental Services was there. There was Siraj, who was involved in some, from an environmental perspective, in really detailing some of the issues that are actually happening around ocean plastics and pollution, and them entering into our urban land, them coming from urban landscapes into the port environment. And then these are just some of the demonstrations. So these were sort of, as you can see here, it's a prototype where the school combined PVC piping, a pool noodle, you can see there, ice cream sticks on the top, and it's powered by a solar panel on the one side. There's a motor that was on the back end there, and you sort of have a little wind farm on the actual object. And obviously, if you blow it up to scale, you can imagine this thing operating in the port there. On the one side here, this one sort of has a conveyor belt, and this then becomes sort of the collection bin, and another school there. But overall, the prizes were awarded, again, sponsored by the eThekwini Maritime Cluster. And this was the winning team. It is a school, Stengile Secondary School, which is based out in Claremont. The prize that you see there actually goes towards the school. And then the learners, again, walked away with some devices. And that was our activation.
Thank you so much, Nkululeko. And I think what I liked about the images you shared is that, well, firstly, our ports and harbors are often seen as inaccessible and as barriers, and who is allowed to go, and how do you dodge the heavy equipment? And I've been frequently to Durban, sometimes 15, 20 times a year. And I think the next time I'm there, I'm definitely going to be joining some of your research and your engagement. And then secondly, I think it really points to this idea of the whole society approach. I saw you had presentations from Transnet. So you're combining not just the idea of just a schools program, but really bringing in public agencies, bringing in designers, bringing in, as you mentioned, your guest judges as well. And actually, in reality, that's really what it looks like. I see a hand from Rihanna, if you wanted to share a thought, Rihanna.
So I just want to congratulate Nkululeko, Rashik. I'm involved with a project in Nkululeko, and I mean, it looks like you've done National Treasury is trying to do under Partnering for Inclusive Growth. And I think we must find a way to make sure that this work lands, to understand that there are people who already know how to partner for inclusive growth. And Rashik, I know that there's a session planned at the Cape Town Royal Yacht Club, and I would love to find a way to take the work that the Open Ocean team have been doing and inspire others around. It doesn't need some expert to come and tell you how to do this stuff. And I'm super excited, Nkululeko, to also take this idea to the Slovo youth team, because they're about to start a recycling project. And I think when they see that you can actually do something meaningful, it's going to mean a lot to them. So well done. It's really fascinating stuff.
I echo the sentiments of Rihanna. Thank you so much, Nkululeko, and I'm sure we're going to be in touch for years and years to come. Zikhona Mgedle is here from the Langa Bicycle Hub. Zikhona, if you have a few minutes to share, did everyone survive the bike bus, and how did it go? I realized the weather was perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, and despite having a very busy day yourself. Thanks, Mzi.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We had a great, amazing day yesterday. A good turnout. We have about 53 participants who joined the bike bus. Sorry, just to introduce myself. I'm not sure if everyone knows me on the call. I'm with Langa Bicycle Hub in Cape Town, an initiative that is getting people on bicycles to commute and also providing a safe space for people to cycle and connecting communities. So yesterday, for our Rebuild activation plan was to organize a bike bus from Cape Town CBD to Langa to see the work that we've been doing for almost a year and explore a space where we're gonna have a possible lease to build an official space soon, which is a pump track. Since I've said that, we had about 53 participants when I counted the register this morning, which was a good turnout, and many people came in to support, and they are following our page, and they're trying to find ways to donate to the cause, where we will be building up a bicycle workshop at the City of Cape Town pump track, which is an exciting news for us, because we were planning to have this outcome of connecting with people, connecting with the public to support the initiative. And so many people are offering their services and their contacts for donations and also trying to assist us as well with some bicycle equipment. So we are so grateful for the seed funding from our cities network and also South African Cities Network. Thank you so much. And also one amazing milestone for us yesterday, since we were setting up at the Central Library, we didn't inform them initially, but we managed to communicate with them and they love the idea. We're exploring better ways of having some flyers for the next activation at the Central Library and also how the Central Library can join in and support the bike bus. It looks like it might be a monthly event going forward. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, MZ. And I think the best part about the bike bus is not really just about getting people on bicycles or advocating for better cycling and walking facilities, but I think if people get to see their city from all walks of life, they get to go to places they haven't necessarily been. They get to learn about your ambitions, and I think in these times when people are longing for connection, I think as you mentioned, even just with the Central Library, there's already a connection formed there, which will benefit going forward. And hopefully, as you say, every single month there'll now be a bike bus to and from Cape Town Central Library. And my bigger hope is indeed that you take this around the country, and that there are bicycle hubs and hubs, as Rihanna has shown as well, hubs around the country where people can connect to walk or cycle frequently. And I think that's an amazing way to rebuild and recover from crises as well. Thanks, MZ. I realize we're running quite late, but the content has been amazing from the posters to the various activations. We'll have to, I suppose, formally and officially close off Urban Festival 2021 and to celebrate World Cities Day. I'll hand over to the CEO of the African Cities Network, who has been key to this entire month, really, and bringing all of us together again. Sithole Mbanga, over to you. Thank you.
Sithole, you're on mute.
Muted. I apologize. I was busy typing to back to Rihanna, because Rihanna is quite excited by what she's been hearing from Kululeko, from the colleagues that are in Cape Town with the biking, and I'm equally excited. I also heard some of the stuff that Siwe was making reference to. Great stuff, Siwe, I must say. Always nice surprises that come through the work that you're doing. I mean, it's quite exciting. And with that said, I have a very, very difficult task, Rashik. You guys have said I must be scripted, and I'm not the type of person that can be scripted. But anyway, I'm gonna try as much as possible.
That wasn't me. That wasn't me.
I don't know who it was. I don't know who it was, but hey, someone said I must get scripted because I'm not good with being unscripted. Colleagues and everybody on the platform, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make closing remarks. I feel quite honored to do this. Today is 1st of October. By the way, incidentally, October is exactly the same month that the South African Cities Network was born, some 19 years ago. So we have a lot of reason to celebrate with our partners, the Cities Support Program, COCTA, Human Settlements, and all other organizations that have been working with us trying to drive the urban agenda in the last 19 years, as it were. Obviously, one of the things that we are speaking about in this context is the all of society. We've tried as much as we possibly can, contesting with a month that is a month of canvassing by political parties, to get people to go and vote tomorrow, which is quite an interesting incident, by the way, to that. To try to make this program and all of society as much as we possibly can. Hopefully we have succeeded in that. I think it's quite important that we indicate that we have hosted this particular Urban Festival under rather different and difficult, challenging times. And yet for me, also very eye-opening about the alternatives, about how it is that we should be approaching life in general and the work that we are doing. So COVID-19 is that phenomena that I'm talking about, which has really hit us hard and has forced us to start to rethink about our economies, about our finances, about how it is that we respond to the health challenge through planning, amongst other things. As it were, then the future of governments, is very much dependent on the collective action of governments, of communities, of cities, of private sector individuals, the business community, so to speak, people that are in the research fraternity, and in fact, everybody else, so as to be able to give effect to the notion of an all of society. Today, there are about 1 billion people, right, that are living in informal settlements. About 70% of them are going to be impacted upon not only by the COVID, but I think additionally is going to be the burden of having to deal with COVID. So poverty is going to be multiplied in many ways than not. So the health and the economic impacts of COVID, as well as climate change, are very much linked to inequality, right? And I think we're going to have to find ways of thinking about what are the best ways of resolving some of these challenges through policy, through legislation, through the actions that we undertake. But I think importantly, by being accountable to each other. I'm quite happy that we have had quite rigorous engagements in this edition of the Urban Festival, which, by the way, is the second edition. I'm looking forward to the third edition of the Urban Festival early next year. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it is that we are going to be able to take on some of the innovations that we have seen through the 3 days of platforming, as well as other international events, by the way. I mean, I was privileged to be part and parcel of other events that were hosted by other organizations outside of the Urban Festival that we have jointly hosted with the parties and the organizations that I have made mention. With those very, very few words, I would like to thank everybody that is on this platform again. I would like to thank our partners in government, particularly the Department of Cooperative Governance. Kudos to you, Stephanie and team, and the DG, Minister, Deputy Minister, everybody that was there. The National Department of Human Settlements. Rashik, you've been making mention of Monica, but she's not the only person that has been here. I think it's also quite important to acknowledge their effort. It's quite important to also acknowledge the background effort that was played by National Treasury through the City Support Program. I mean, they've been quiet, but actually they've been playing a very meaningful role in getting us organized in the fashion that we are engaged in. Private sector organizations that have been here, obviously I've not been party to all the sessions, but I know, having scanned through the program, that private sector organizations were here, academic and research institutions, civil society organizations. We've just seen the work that's happening in Cape Town, that's civil society organizations and interest groups. By the way, in Nkululeko, I think I must say, I am quite excited by what you have just shared with us today. I think it's important that you keep it up. And I think, as Rihanna is saying, it's something that must be taken on and shared with everybody. Rashik and your team, guys at Future Cities, thanks very much for having curated. Here's what I'm going to say, just in case I get knocked down by a bus, and I'm saying that very positively. We cannot reconceptualize the next urban festival 3 months before. Okay, so I would like to say, as part and parcel of my closing remarks, it's quite important that we get on with the job already and evaluate what has happened here, evaluate what has happened last year, and start conceptualizing. I think there's an opportunity that we are losing by coming in late to the party. I think it's quite important that we're opportunistic early on and we shouldn't wait for each other who's going to pick up the call and all of that. I think we should just get on with this thing. It's a bus that is moving. I think it's quite important that we should get many more people involved, many more organizations involved, many more of people from the continent involved. I mean, I think there's an opportunity for us to share how we are going through this transitioning and this democracy as South Africa with the African continent, but also importantly to learn from what have colleagues and our counterparts from other parts of the continent gone, how have they gone through this particular process. So thanks very much for curating this year's program, and let's see how we can speedily work through the next program. I also would like to thank my colleagues in the South African Cities Network, all of them, research associates, people that are in the communications, Sean, working in the background there, almost alone, and Lebu, but everybody else that is part and parcel of the secretariat that have been working behind the scene to make this happen. And I apologize for not having mentioned any one particular person or organization, but the point is to thank all of you. Thanks very much, Rashik, and thanks everybody.
Thanks so much, Sithole. I think what's really stood out to me and to all the participants is I think people always say they want to talk to government and we must reduce the barriers. And I think Urban Festival is that. You know, it's we have people, not just the activations, we have people, you know, we had 12 different sessions, we had artists, we had musicians, we had poets, we had departments that direct housing strategy for the entire country. We had cooperative governance, which asked us how to work together, local municipalities. And I think the time of saying that there's no space for conversation, you know, that's not true. And I think Urban Festival is so open in that it says, let's actually all talk. You know, nobody's restricted in terms of what they can say. We've got live tweets going out. We've got, you know, these Zooms are all recorded. People are on record. And I think, thank you to and your team for creating a safe space for real all of government, whole of society conversations. And just so everyone knows, there are no restrictions on these conversations, on the ideas, on the provocations. And we're talking about local, provincial, national governments. You know, cities were sharing their issues with alien species in some of their water systems. Very open. So thank you for what we I think take for granted as a very constructive platform. And I really hope, as you say, that we'll have even more time to build the platforms in the coming years. On that note, I'd like each person to just in our panel to share one word which sums up Urban Festival 2021. I'll start with myself. It's actually 2 words. It's new paradigms. And then I'll hand over to Sean, Lebogang, Mzi, and Nkululeko. Just one word which sums up Urban Festival 2021.
I'll go, Rashik. My word is inspired.
Go for it, Ria. Inspired. Nkululeko.
Collaboration.
Sithole, Mzi, Salome, Siwe, Stephanie, Yasmin. One word.
Can I go? Cool. Mine is
Go
connectivity. Connectivity.
Great.
I'll go next. Mine is transformed.
Sithole.
Mine is, mine is exploration.
If I may go next, Rashid, mine is learning.
Siwe, Sean, anybody else, Lebogang?
Mine is patience, Rashik. Patience.
Absolutely.
Mine. Mine is creativity.
Mine is partnership. Mine is
I think he has-
hopeful. Sorry.
Hopeful. Great.
Hopeful.
Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for joining in, and I'm sure there'll be a recording of this online as soon as Tuesday. Please get out and vote tomorrow and exercise your rights to be an active citizen. Enjoy the public holiday, and thank you very much for making Urban Festival 2021 a success. As I said, over 1,000 people on different platforms who came together for this edition as well. Thanks everyone, and if Sean could play us out with our infamous video, which captures the energy of this year. Thanks everyone, goodbye.